I'm so sad for the people who are going to listen to our podcast who will never get to see us dance because they're not watching our video. Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of Breaking the Barriers. I am delighted, as always, to be joined here today by my dear friend Red Moon Eagle as we continue to explore this sort of mini episode series on the foundational gifts. So, in our last episode, we did a brief overview of the 3 E's of energy sensitivity, empathy, and earth sense. And today we're going to very specifically dive into the gift of energy sensitivity. So before we get started, Red, if you would be so kind as to introduce yourself.
My name is Red Moon Eagle. I am a psychic catalyst, a teacher, and a healer. And this little mini series is probably one of my favorite topics. So I'm excited to get into the details.
Yes. And Red's work has been so important in sort of peeling apart the nuances of these gifts. And so I'm super excited to have this conversation. And just in case you don't know me, I'm Safrianna and Red, the Queer Spirit Guide. I am an author, speaker, CEO, and transformational mentor, and a licensed trauma therapist. But trying to get used to not putting that as the first thing as I'm stepping into my author role more and more. So let's talk about energy sensitivity. So this is one of the 3 foundational gifts. And we've talked a lot about in the past, Red, the misconception that everyone can develop empathy. And in reality, that's not true. Some people have energy sensitivity, which is very, very different. So at its most fundamental level, how would you describe energy sensitivity?
I have to describe it via all the multiplicity of words that have been shared with me over the years, which is that an energy sensitive navigates the world through their felt sense of the energy, the electromagnetic spectrum that's in our world. So the space between 2 people is full. It's full of vibration. It's full of information. It is full of energy. And energy sensitives can feel that. They know that. They know how to navigate that. They know their world through that connection.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's different than an emotional connection. It really is this vibrational, almost like frequency, we could use that word, subtle quality of the ambience between spaces. I will never forget. So I do have the gift of energy sensitivity, and I will never forget reading a study on the field given off, the electromagnetic field given off by the heart. And it can extend like 6 to 7 feet. And that made total sense to me. I was like, oh yeah, I can feel that.
Yeah.
I can feel when I get in somebody's space and all of a sudden I can feel their vibration, their energy of their heart. So there is actual like science behind this, which is very, very cool. So when someone is picking up on the energy, the vibration, what are some of the ways that that's experienced in their body or in their mental, emotional state personally?
Well, I think there's 9 different answers for that, at least. I think that from many of the conversations I've had, a lot of it has to do with the translation of that information through their physical body and however they're landing in their body. Some people go up into their head and they go, oh, what is that? How do I connect that? How do I define that? What does that make me? There's a brain thing immediately. It seems like the mid part, that heart part, there is those that have land in that place. They are a combination, a little bit of up in the head and a little bit of what they're feeling. Like you said, like, oh, I could feel that. I know what that is. And then there are those that it's in the lower body. So their body will react. They will have a reaction, a physiological reaction to that energy. It tells them something. And then they'll go, oh, what was that? What did that mean? I don't know. I don't care. I'm just going to go with it. Like there's a little bit more of a physiological felt sense of that is information. I need to do something with it. There are layers of different responses. Some energy sensitives will say, it's almost like a synesthesia. Like I could taste that frustration, or it's sharp, it's soft, it's smooth, it's up, it's down, it's high, it's low, it's icky, it's yummy, warm, feels good. There's a It's a very felt sensation based gift, really. And even those that go up in their head, if you say, do you hear the electricity in the walls sometimes? They're like, yeah. And then I spin with it and I'm trying to figure out how to make it stop, right? Like I joke sometimes that I don't joke because it is kind of an irritating thing. I don't like games that play the same song over and over again, because I will get agitated over a period of time and I don't even know why I'm agitated until I find out, oh, right, this back current of this vibration, this oscillation, this sound frequency that's going up and down and it's on repeat is irritating.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of energy sensitives react to things that are in their environment with that connection, that felt sense through the electromagnetic spectrum, and they don't really know why.
Mm-hmm.
But they know it's real and they can't find the words to explain it.
I will never forget. I taught summer camp for like 2 years as an adult, once as a child, but I was teaching, you're going to love this. The class was called Elements.
Ooh.
And every week we did an air, earth, water, or fire activity.
Oh.
And that was, mental, emotional, body, physical,
Yeah.
spiritual, etc. And one day the activity was literally that I kept turning the fluorescent lights on and off. I would have them breathe and like be in the moment and listen to the room. And then I would turn the lights off and that buzz would go off. And everybody would be like, there was all this filling in the space. And so I think of like an empath's going to hear the difference, but
Absolutely.
they're not necessarily going to feel the difference in their body of whether it's buzzing or not. Whereas an energy sensitive is really going to feel like, oh, there is a vibration that I could pick up on that's now absent, or a vibration that wasn't there that's now there that I'm picking up on. And it is that I think that there's nuance in this, because an energy sensitive is they're feeling all kinds of things. They're not emotionless beings.
No. Oh,
they have all kinds of their own feelings. They're feeling them in their body. They're just not picking up on other people's emotions. They're picking up on that vibrational field. So when you walk in, I have empathy as well, and it can be hard for me to tease it apart sometimes. But if I tune into that energy sensitive side, I can feel the dissonant quality of somebody who is very sad or heartbroken or whatever. Even if I couldn't pick up the emotion, right? There's like that dampened, crackly, something feels off here. And that's still felt in the body. It's still pinging kind of off of your own internal landscape of what that vibration is communicating.
Yes. There are layers of how energy sensitives pick up on things. So there's a layer of being in a space that maybe is older, that hasn't had a lot of energy clearing, and they might go, oh, there's something here. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's haunted, right? Because that's where everybody goes, is to the haunted space. Or bad things happened here. Yeah, that could be, right? Or I had an experience with a very young child who's energy sensitive, and we went on a hike somewhere, and I won't tell you where, but we walked by this place that I kind of knew intellectually. There was a little history there. This kid stopped, turned like a heat-seeking missile to the place where the building had been. And he goes, he doesn't really say anything. He's just, you can tell he's just vibrating, I guess is the best way I have to describe that. And he was shaking his head. And at first I thought he was mad, because I don't read facial expressions very well sometimes. And then he does this and turned to me and smiled like the most radiant smile and went, okay, we can go now. And I was like,
just discharged the static.
Yeah. And it wasn't till like I could pry it out of him later, slowly, like trying to how do I get out the I would like to understand what happened.
Mhm.
And he was adorable. He goes, "Well, I could feel that there was something there before, but now there's not supposed to be anything there now, but I know that there is something there now and it doesn't need to be there now. So I just asked it if it didn't want to be there now and I told it it could go home to back where it was." And I'm like,
Sweet little child here. Wow.
right? And for my own awareness of energy and space in my own gift, I did kind of, and I was able to translate, but energy sensitive children will pick up on and adults too, if they can connect back to that raw energy sensitive ability, there is a little sense of things that are left over, out of time, don't belong in that place anymore, but there's a residual, and you can kind of like navigate that charge to release the charge. And that brings me to transmutation. And this little kid on that trail, like, oh my God, he had been really calm, like kind of has stayed, we're going on a hike, I'm having fun, but it wasn't like this charge. Oh my God, for the next 15 minutes, it's like somebody had jacked him full of Mountain Dew. He ran like a chicken with his head cut off and screaming and singing and just letting all of it out. And that was the transmutation process for him.
Right.
He had, through his connection to that electromagnetic spectrum and that awareness, he then had to get it out. And it is not uncommon for energy sensitives because they navigate the world connecting to all energy. They're not deliberately sucking you dry. That's a whole separate thing. That is not a thing that energy sensitives ever do on purpose, ever. But they navigate through that felt sense. So if you find an energy sensitive that's completely depleted, I question whether or not they're just over full and they
Mm,
haven't done enough transmutation activity to pour a little of what's overflowing out of the jar.
right.
Because an energy sensitive is very much like the visualization of a jar of water. You have an energy sensitive that they got a little bit of water at the bottom of the jar in the morning, but by the end of the day, that jar is full. And it is so full you can't put any more water in, but stuff is still kind of seeping out and it's kind of seeping out sideways. So if you ask an energy sensitive, like, do you want to transmute something? And they go, yeah, I'm going to go for a run. A run is like a tablespoon out of the jar. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily going to really release enough. It's not going to transmute. Um, but if you ask them to help you make dinner and you have no recipe, they're going entirely by their creative, whatever, how they navigate. That's like taking a half a cup out of that jar. If you ask that energy sensitive to help you clean the bathroom and maybe come up with some ideas for what sets of towels to use, or like whatever creative thing that you can come up with that's transmutive, right? Even if an energy sensitive just sits on the couch while you're making dinner and gives you ideas and knits a shawl, that's 2 cups that they've taken out of that jar. Transmutation is taking all that energy that they've been absorbing and making something new, transmuting to something new. That's what energy sensitives do. It doesn't matter if they think they're artistic or creative or not. Watch them. They all are.
Well, and it's that need to clear the system
Yes,
and that need to express something. So it's like a literally a discharge of the static, a
it
need
is.
to work it out in another way while it's
Mhm.
trapped in here. I'm curious. I've been sitting with this recently. Sometimes I get overwhelmed. Nine problem, right? But we all do. But I'll have this feeling like it's so funny you said jar of water because I sometimes feel like a jar of bees. Like
Mm.
there's too much energy trapped in my body that's like
Yep.
trying to work out the
Yep.
surface. Is that
Mhm.
a common
Yeah.
energy sensitive experience? Because I asked an empath if they'd ever had that feeling, and they were like, no,
No.
there's a thing that's kind of adjacent to that. And then I asked another energy sensitive, and they were like, oh yeah, it's
Oh,
a little
yeah.
bit different, but it's, here or there. And
Mhm.
so that is common.
There is something about the energy sensitive in their felt sense of their own biological body's energy and its connection to the world. Whether or not they have Earth Sense Booster or not, or empathy to help it along or whatever, that felt sense of awareness of energy is energy sensitivity. I mean, it is the sensitive awareness of the electromagnetic spectrum, the space in between, whether you want to call that plasma, whether you want to call it oxygen. I don't have words. I'm not a scientist, but there is an awareness of that in between. When Wi-Fi became really, really prominent in the world, I knew quite a few energy sensitives that were just slowly losing their
I
mind.
I remember that. I remember when Wi-Fi became a thing, and all of a sudden I could feel
Yes.
signal. And I'm like, this is probably not great that this is all going through my body right now.
Well, I mean, it's not a surprise we started having these big conspiracy theories and these big people saying, "Oh my god, the aliens are out to get us," or "The government's out to mind control us," or whatever. But if you pay attention and you look at the details of who was saying it, when they were saying it, and how it started to come about, it correlated quite succinctly with how the energy sensitive started screaming, "Hey, you're not you're not noticing something that I live."
Mhm.
And it unfortunately still never brought energy sensitivity to the forefront. I watched it happen, and I've I think that in my world, because I've known I was different, right? I'm not an empath. I don't have the gift of empathy. I'm missing the limb. So I would listen to those energy sensitives probably a little bit more carefully than some, right? Because at least I could correlate somewhat. I could uh, compassionately understand that felt sense, and I could validate that for those energy sensitives that we're not getting that validation anywhere else.
Right. Yeah, and that
Period.
it's a big thing, like, to understand how different people experience the world. And it's I liken the energy sensitivity to having a really big aura. It's not necessarily your aura, but it not yours, but like a really big auric field that can feel the electromagnetic vibrational stuff that's happening. So when you're coming into a space, you're getting all that information, and it's not a piece of information that I feel like the new age or the spiritual community really started to parse apart at all until maybe the last 10 years. We're starting to get more nuance, and you've been doing it your whole life, but it's that kinetic information that is so valuable. There's so much information in it, but that shame that many people have experienced, if they do have energy sensitivity as a gift and not the empathy, because of the way that it's been addressed.
Well, I've had enough. I am truly blessed by all the clients and friends and people that have been willing to sit and answer my 5 million questions, because I'm always full of questions. Please explain that. Tell me that differently. Or I find a different way of asking it to get a different side of the answer, because the first one didn't make a complete picture. And there is a quality of how how many energy sensitives I have seen that they have expressed deep grief and sadness, that they feel they are missing something. There's something wrong with them. They're not
Mhm.
whole. They've disappointed someone. They're afraid they're never going to get to where they need to be as a spiritual being in this world. They are terrified that they've hurt people because they couldn't get the thing, or that they just don't understand how to do the thing, right? Like how to get there. They're embarrassed when they didn't pick up on something that an empath picked up on. I mean, there's layers and layers and layers of this. And then I meet people who they just force themselves to learn the language of empathy, the gift of empathy, to translate their own navigation in the world. And from that place, if you said anything like, if you walk into a room of 10 people, how do you know the person on the other side of the room is angry? And an energy sensitive notoriously says, well, because they look angry, they did something, there was a vibe, like they'll talk about the signals, they'll talk about facial cues, they will talk about the other person's cues, they will talk about a variety of things, but not once, not once do they go to a place of, I feel their anger and I am angry.
Mm-hmm.
But an empath will go there. An empath
Right.
will say, well, I felt their emotion. They always use that word. And there are times, a few times that I've run across people that they are very energy sensitive and they have been so abused, and I'm going to use that word inadvertently, by the empaths that have beat into them one way or the other, that to be a spiritual person, to work in this field, you have to be an empath. And if you're not, you're just not trying hard enough, or I don't know. There's so many things. And they're probably some of the hardest clients to explain energy sensitivity over and over and over again. And they do get it. You can see behind the eyes, you can see the soul going, yes. But the brain or the fear or whatever that shadow is like, oh no, I've tried this before. I am not going to admit that I don't have empathy.
Right.
But once they sit with it, or once they go sleep on it, or I don't know, give them a couple days, I get that phone call or I get that text that says, oh my God, I didn't realize I was carrying this whole extra backpack of expectation, that I can let that go now.
Yes.
And I can just be me.
Yes. And so let's talk about advantages to this particular gift,
Oh,
right? Like, I want to talk about advantages. I want to talk about pitfalls, and then I'd like to circle back to tools.
yeah.
But the advantages, right? Like, I wish, well, I don't necessarily wish, but sometimes I wish I could isolate just my energy sensitivity and just wear that hat, because in my experience, energy sensitives do have an easier time going out and being social, because they're not picking up on the undercurrent of like all of the emotions they're bringing. Now, if everybody in the group is anxious, for example, the energy sensitive's going to absolutely pick up on the vibe of like, what's going on here?
Right. They'll totally.
Off.
They will.
Yeah. But yeah, what are some of the other advantages of the gift?
I would say that probably one of the biggest is the awareness that you're having your emotions and I'm having mine, and I don't feel yours.
Yes.
That's an advantage,
It's
right?
a big advantage, not
Now,
having that confusion.
right. I mean, it does not mean that the energy sensitive cannot be empathic with you, right? If you're upset because you broke your leg, and I have broken my leg in the past, or my arm, or whatever the limb is, I can be empathically compassionate in that moment and go, oh my God, yeah, like that sucks. And this is what happened to me. Would you like me to help you with that? Like that's an empathetic understanding. I've had pain, you've had pain. It could be a totally different limb, a totally different circumstance, but there's a felt emotional language, right? And an energy sensitive is going to rely on that language. They will. Even if they're not big talkers, they will talk because they know they don't get it otherwise.
Right.
Okay. The advantage also is that an energy sensitive is very aware of kinetic smearing in a space. So, somebody, you walk into a space, and energy sensitive will go, yeah, that corner over there is kind of, an empath might just go, There's sadness here. I've seen it happen. I'm not picking on my empaths, I promise. It is a more defined, there's more I can't say more preciseness, but there is a type of preciseness that can come with energy sensitivity. There is a built-in kind of knowledge in space. So I've used this analogy before. An energy sensitive comes into the place, and this is your favorite cup in the whole world. The energy sensitive looks at the cup and goes, "That belongs to somebody. I'm not touching that." An empath goes over, picks up the cup, and goes, "Oh my God, this is so wonderful. I love this. Can I borrow this one?" Like not from bad or not having good boundaries. It has to do with the energy sensitive recognizes the signatures of belonging, if that makes sense. There's an awareness of this is the edge of something.
Yeah, that's really, I'm curious about that too. Like, I'm guessing, because I know energy sensitives, obviously. I'm guessing like any gift that sensing is something we can develop, right? If we have the gift, we can continue to expand and grow the gift
Yes.
and find the nuance. Because I'm sure that there are energy sensitives that aren't yet aware of that edge unless it's happening on a subconscious level. And
Oh, I watch them. I watch the ones that aren't aware, and they still have characteristics that are very much like this. They'll go, "Oh, I want to touch the." Oh, wait. You'll watch them. They'll pull back. It won't be demonstrative. It will be extraordinarily subtle. They energy sensitive positives, I think, also are the very much the awareness of when something is off and when something is really good in a space. Where I've been places where empaths go, they do the shutdown because something's really emotionally big, but an energy sensitive, depending on kind of how they've expanded their gifts, they can share their bubble of safety and kind of help that empath have a buffer in that space. Energy sensitives are kind of aware in some way that there is this shared energy in a space, and they can, depending on, again, the expansion of their gifts, there could be like, "Yep, I'm going to create a barrier right here in the middle of the room." There's so much nuance to the benefits of being energy sensitive. Song, vibration, sound, they are always just a little bit more sensitive to those things. Light spectrum. Can't tell you how many energy sensitives I know that could hear dog whistles when they were kids. I still hear them. Don't get me started about the guy who's got huskies in the neighborhood. He's driving me crazy. The humming in computers, knowing when something's in cars, knowing when something's on, but you can't figure out what's on, and you're like a heat-seeking missile in the space, and everybody else is going, "What are they looking for?" Knowing when plants are alive or not alive, like that can be a very energy sensitive thing. Knowing if seeds are good or not good. I mean, I know an energy sensitive that he can pick out all the alive seeds in a seed packet and know which ones to plant.
Now I need to experiment with this because we're planting our garden, and I'm going to be like, "All right, Justin, this one's good, this one's bad. Let's see what happens. We're going to plant them both. We're going to do a control study. Let's go."
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it kind of play out in some interesting ways with different energy sensitives that, again, they navigate their world that way, but they haven't had any validation. So they've learned how to like just use it.
Yeah.
Without knowing how to clarify to others and be heard.
Yeah, I think of in Druidry the concept of Nuevra, which is life force energy. And it's like an energy sensitive is actually picking up on the Nuevra. They're seeing, feeling, tasting, touching something, that life force energy in a way that empaths, if they're just got that harvest of empath, they're not going to pick up on. And it is very funny to talk to my empaths and see where we differ, because I have that piece of the ability to feel that life force.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk about, like, yes, there's lots of advantages to the gift. And there's also the challenging sides of the gift. For example, the fact that, it's been a little squirrely over here in the collective, and I pick up on all of that. And so then I'm like trying to transmute all of that, and I blow up my electronics.
Yep.
I'm really, really glad that the webcam is working so far today, but my microphone went out yesterday. My microphone was my camera was crackling and doing crazy things. And I've definitely drained phone batteries and things like that. And that is an energy sensitive experience. That's one of the things whenever I talk to somebody who learns that they have energy sensitivity and I bring that up, every single one of them is like, oh my gosh, finally, this explanation for why I did that thing to that electronic thing.
Yep. Because it's electricity. It's part of the electromagnetic spectrum. That's why, I mean, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a physical scientist, physicist. I do not have that expertise, but I did take physical science in junior high. And one of the things that I experienced in junior high was we were talking about kinetic energy, potential kinetic energy. And the teacher was, how much potential kinetic energy is in this ball before it rolls down the hill? And I went, all of it. And everybody in the room looked at me and went, huh? And I went, well, all of it, because the space between the ball at rest and the ball at the bottom, there's all kinds of stuff it's absorbing as it goes down. I thought my teacher was going to lose her mind. Pretty sure.
She's like, that's an interesting take.
Right? And then I learned about the laws of physics. And my perception of the laws of physics are, you're missing an entire in-between space and nobody's talking about that shit.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Makes me think of all the science fiction I read about characters that can manipulate the electrons and such that are in space.
Because
so
they're aware of it. You can't, energy sensitivity is the awareness of all of that.
Right.
It's really hard for an energy sensitive that knows it's a thing to be told it's not a thing. There's a little voice in the back of the brain that goes, but and what am I feeling? That's not making sense. And the other downside to having energy sensitivity is that because empaths navigate the world through emotion and energy sensitives don't, there's a whole subtext in conversations between two empaths
that they're missing out on. Yeah.
They have no idea what's happening.
They just can feel the empath tendrils slapping around. That's yeah. So cats mostly energy sensitive, dogs mostly empath, not a universal, but it's so funny when my partner and my empath partner and I are really entangled and the tendrils are doing things and the cat is like, I don't like that. She starts like howling. She's like, no, I don't like that. But yes, it's hilarious. But that downside is the accusation, right? That an energy sensitive is clueless emotionally, that they're not doing something they should quote unquote do because they should be empathetically connecting. And so that's the challenge of bridging the gap of how do I ask more questions of someone else so that I can try to understand intellectually, even if I can't understand in my body or feel it, that energy sensitives might have to take the extra step for it. And I can't help but think of a recent conversation I've had that just feels very relevant here. I was talking to this person and she was like, there are so many people that are running around claiming to be empaths, but all they're doing is feeling their own feelings and trying to put them on others. Like, oh, you're feeling this. And this friend was like, no, you're just feeling your own feelings. So there is that you literally, if you are just energy sensitive, or that's the gift you're working with, you cannot feel someone else's emotion. You could be able to pick up on the signals or the signs of what that looks like normally in a person, right? As you said earlier, the signals on the face, the body language. And then high vibe, low vibe, staticky vibe, chill
Yeah.
vibe, like what else is going on there? And you might be able to make a judgment from that, but you're, as an energy sensitive, not going to be able to tell exactly the quality. So yeah, that was just it was an interesting conversation that it came up, and she was just like, I'm just so frustrated that people think that they're empaths when they're not. Like, she can
Yeah.
tell not everybody is an empath.
Oh yeah, that is my soapbox of the last 50 plus years of my life. Yes, thank you very much. I bow now. Yes, that. Because it is a big deal to tell someone that their experience is invalid. So
Mhm.
energy sensitives, well, okay, you're picking up energy, but what's that emotion telling you, right? Like, no, it's not, right? But from an energy sensitive perspective, the other downside is that because nobody's talking about just energy sensitivity, the assumption is if you have awareness of energy, you have awareness of emotion. That is not necessarily true, but you will find that some energy sensitives are so frustrated and so not seen and so desperate to understand why they can't do the things empaths do. They become emotionally intelligent.
Mhm.
I love that because I cannot tell you how many times I and other energy sensitives I've met and worked with have been told, I'm extremely emotionally intelligent. Uh-huh. About you. They're like, yeah. And I was like, but you can't necessarily figure out why your spouse is pissed. They're like, yes, that. I'm like, that be because you ain't an empath.
Yes. And that's like the dark side, right? Is
Yes.
that when that starts to really become like a negative part of self-concept, we're
Yeah.
striving, we're spiraling the drain of mental health, that
Yes.
energy sensitivity can shift into like a pathological sociopathology, like sociopathic tendency of
Oh,
like,
yeah.
when we think of a sociopath, we think of the person who doesn't quote unquote care about other people's emotions.
Correct.
And that is because that trauma response, right? That twisted trauma response is cutting off kind of all emotion, like, screw this, I don't know what's going on and I don't care anymore,
Yes,
essentially.
it is. It's the I don't care anymore, and I'm going to use all of my ability through energy to manipulate the environment to have my needs met.
Mhm.
And that is what energy sensitives who go into that shadowed place do. They will really make their emotions the center of everything and their needs the center of everything, and they will manipulate the energy of a space or the energy around people, and they will use it just like a tool, just like you picked up a hammer to hammer down a nail, right?
Mhm.
Like, it's not, I think the thing about energy, very dark, shadowy energy sensitives, and I have a great deal of compassion for them, and I probably
Mhm.
have a little bit more space in my life for people who behave badly this way, I admit, because I'm very much aware that they probably tried a lot,
Right. Yeah.
really, really hard
Yeah.
to be heard, to be validated, to be seen for this amazing gift that they had. And they were trying, but it felt like nobody around them was giving them the right words or explaining what was happening or gave them the tools to bridge the gap.
Mhm.
And if you don't have any tools, what do? You go, fuck it. I'm just going to take care of me
Yep.
because clearly y'all aren't, if you're not going to honor me, then fine, I'm not going to honor you. Or if you're not going to be safe, then I'm not going to, yeah.
I'm not going to interface in this relationship. And then,
Right.
yeah, and that's the fun with shadow is, when we're not able to connect with the shadow, we don't have the support around it. It does twist, and
Mhm.
no shame, no blame in that. It's trauma response.
Yep.
And that's why these conversations are so important, to begin to let people know, like,
Yeah.
you an energy sensitive is going to have to do potentially more communication. Now, I'm sure I'll get into it on the empath episode, because empaths can pick up on things, but that doesn't mean that they should cut off the actual relating to like check
Yes.
in about what's going on. But an energy sensitive is going to have to work harder to figure out what is going on with another person, whereas in the environment, Nope, they're going to know exactly if it's a safe place, if they
Yep.
feel good, if they feel bad in their own self.
Yes.
So I'm really curious, do energy sensitives tend to be the kind of people who like to do like feng shui and like
Oh, yeah. Oh my
environmental
God.
management type
I
stuff?
can't tell you how many energy sensitives that I've talked to. And the funny thing is they do it usually quite intuitively. So
Yeah.
you'll say, "Have you looked at feng shui?" And they'll go, "Well, that's the thing about the stuff you move around in your house to give it a good vibe." And I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "Oh yeah, I do that already." Like
Yeah.
they don't
You
even
don't
know the
need the
name,
program.
right? Because they know how to follow the flow of a space. I will 100% fall on this sword. I know when my house needs to have all the furniture moved around. I live with an empath who wants it exactly the same way all of the time. Why do we have to change the furniture? And I'm like, Because it needs it."
It needs to move, it needs to breathe, it needs to have its energy reset.
And there's a real resistance to that. The other thing about space and energy sensitives is that because they have gone through so much invalidation of what they're experiencing and they get resistance from people who are not picking up on that, they will, I don't know how a good way of saying this, but it's kind of like a combination of a shadow and just a reflex. They will try to shrink their connection to space down. They try to pull it in. Like if I just pull it in really, really tight, then I'll be safe. I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to worry about those things. But that compaction gives you less space for that energy you're soaking up all the time. They get depleted really fast. Their bodies start shutting down. Like there's some real physiological things that can happen to an energy sensitive that isn't able to be connected expansively
Right.
in their natural way.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. So let's talk about some tips for energy sensitives on how to connect into the gift, how to manage the gift, and the tools to use to do that transmutation, to discharge. Because obviously movement can be a big thing.
Can be.
Can be, but it seems like that alchemical process of
Yes.
creation is the most powerful.
Yep.
But yeah, how do energy sensitives really tune into the gift, expand it, and support themselves?
I think that because we have so many people in the world that they don't, they're so busy trying to be empathic that one of the things I tell anybody who's energy sensitive, I'm like, first off, know that you don't have those little feelers going out. So quit trying to make something be that's not there. So
Yeah.
stop that. Don't even go there in your visualization. Just feel into your space. Second thing is if you're upset, you're angry, you're frustrated, or you're mad, do not touch an electronic. Do not touch your phone. Take your Aura ring off. Take your Apple Watch off. Get disconnected from all the electronics. Take the big headphones off. Get away from the electronics. Get outside. Walk around the block. You're not going to get away from Wi-Fi in most places anymore, but at least you're not directly touching an electrical thing that is adding to your filling up the jar of water, because
Yeah.
every electronic thing that you touch is going to fill your jar up with water. Wireless headphones, big headphones, your phone, like all those things, disconnect. And I mean really disconnect. Take all of the electronics off of your body, put a pair of cotton sweatpants on, and go walk around the block, right? Because that's the other thing. We wear so much polyester fabric that energy sensitives, it's funny, when they're really resistant, they don't want to talk about it. But it is a thing. Energy sensitives know the difference between real fiber and polyester. They know
Yeah.
it, and it's not a popular thing to admit, and it's not a popular thing to talk about it, but they can feel it.
Hmm.
And if you have polyester on your body, an energy sensitive, it is like wearing a plastic bag.
Right.
You have insulated the electromagnetic ability to connect to your world. So that is going to make everything kind of come in sideways. And where does it go? Where are you putting it in your body? I know an energy sensitive that she was really hardcore into like exercise, like yoga pants and bras and different things, right? She was so embarrassed. And I'm trying not hard to laugh because it was a little funny to me. But everywhere that she covered her body with plastic, she had a recurring rash. But she did not have a rash from here up.
Right.
She didn't have a rash from here down. And she didn't have a rash from her ankle down to her feet because she always wore cotton socks because they were more comfortable.
Yeah, it's a thing.
And when she went to bamboo, because I think bamboo was like the cheapest thing she could find for exercise stuff, her rashes disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, oh my God, I feel like I've gone crazy. I've gotten so much more sensitive. And I went, yep.
Yeah, it's like it's piling insulation around your body and like just stacking up insulation on the energy field so that you're cocooned, which could be great in a certain circumstance,
Absolutely.
maybe, but not in
really.
the day to day. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the first thing. Get out of your plastic clothes if you can, get disconnected from your electronics and get outside. And even if you're not an outside bio number, like you're like, oh, gardens, ew, go get a book, a paper book, and go sit under a pavilion outside air. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you have to go for a hike. I am not saying that you have to turn into the hippie that I am. Proudly hippie here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
Find a way to be disconnected from electronics as much as you can and get reconnected. And then in transmutation, honestly, pick a craft, pick a hobby. Some people do puzzles. Puzzles are transmutive. You're taking something and you're making a new thing.
Coloring books.
Coloring books.
It's the
Oh my
same
God,
part of
yes.
your brain as mindfulness. It does the
Yes.
same thing in your brain as meditating. So
Yes,
coloring
it does.
book, yeah.
Coloring books, watercolor, knitting, crocheting, sewing, painting, drawing. There are so many crafts.
Yeah, and it could be if you're a gardener, like going out and doing the physical thing of putting together a space or trimming, pulling weeds, like something that gets you in that, like I'm purposeful. There's an intention here.
Yeah.
And my body is in motion, whether in a big way or a small way.
Yes.
To change this. It's, I think of in psychology, like literally the difference between talking about something versus drawing about it versus doing a sand tray or, all these different things. Like we have to get that energetic static build up stuff
transmuted. You have to transmute that. Energy sensitives who are not transmuting do get that same symptomology that empaths get, which is I'm overwhelmed, I'm too full, I don't know what to do with it, I need to digest this, I need to go hide in a corner, pull the blankets over my head and disconnect from the world. The problem is they don't get better as fast, ironically, as an empath does because they're not transmuting.
Yeah.
It just continues to build.
That makes sense. The pressure building in the jar until the jar's going to shatter. And you're going to have a mental breakdown. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
Or physical. Like energy sensitives across the board, I've noticed. I don't know how to say this without, I'm just going to say it. I've noticed some patterns of energy sensitives that lean into drug use, alcohol abuse, get hooked on pain pills. Their bodies seems to be around their 40s and 50s. They start breaking down in ways that don't kind of really go in a straight line. It doesn't really make sense. Especially those who have always lived in a city, those who have not had a lot of time in their younger years or even in their middle years where they were able to get out and get disconnected from electronics.
Mm-hmm.
I actually know 2 energy sensitive people who've had brain tumors already and they're in their 30s because they're in their 30s and for the last 30 years they've been hooked into the internet and cell phones and not because cell phones cause cancer or that being in front of the Wi-Fi is gonna do a thing, but energy sensitives are more vulnerable to the effects of not transmuting.
Yeah.
Period.
No, that
It
makes
just is.
I'm pretty sure as we're even talking that 2 people I have known who have died from brain cancer were probably energy sensitives, and they died way younger than they should have. So, yeah, no, there's it, we'll be talking at our next episode about empathy and how that
Yes.
shows up and the pitfalls and the gifts and all of that. But yeah, like it's so important that people are aware that there are a multitude of gifts and a multitude of tools.
Yep.
So this energy sensitivity piece, I'm so glad you're continuing to bring it forward so that people know that there's a difference.
Yep.
And again, just to reiterate, there are people like me who have
Mhm.
2
All
of those foundational
Yep.
gifts or all 3.
Yeah.
And so it can be somewhat hard to peel them
Tease
apart.
apart. Yeah.
But if you're resonating with, I walk into a space, I feel a vibe. I feel the vibration in my car and it drives me bonkers when it's slightly off, or I hear the electronics humming, or I got really mad and I drained my cell phone. That's a real story.
Yeah.
I had never been so angry in my life. My phone went from 71% to 0 and shut down, and I couldn't turn it back on. It's fun. Uh, these are real lived experiences.
Yep.
And I personally want to just re-emphasize again and again and again, there is no hierarchy. There is no better gift or worst gift or anything. You are not limited or wrong if you have just, and I'm using air quotes right now, just the gift of energy sensitivity, because as with everything, it has its light side and its dark side. It has its perks and it has its challenges. And that's just this human 3D experience.
Yeah.
You just got to accept that.
And there's beauty and wonder and bliss and joy in all of the gifts. And it's my hot topic because I really, truly, myself, as well as other people that I have been so blessed to work with, have been unseen, unrecognized, have been hurt. And hurt people. We know that. Psychology and sociology and just human behavior tell us that. And these gifts are so beautiful and so powerful, and they give us the ability to be with each other in this joyful, blissful way that honors the complexity. And I've been paying attention my whole life. I've been watching. I've been taking notes. And I ask a lot of questions because I want to be able to put it in a framework that can be delivered back. And that's why I'm also very thankful, Safi, that we're doing this podcast, because I think more energy sensitives can come out of the shadows and say, I don't have to be an empath. This is awesome.
Yay!
Yay!
No, I even remember we had a mutual client that we worked with who was an energy sensitive, and that validation that there was nothing wrong with them, that they just needed to tune into their gift and build that. They didn't have to strive to do something different and be someone else. Like that's the beauty of this work. So thank you again, Red. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. And, to all our energy sensitives out there, know that your gift is beautiful and it brings so much important information and what you can add to a space, to a community, and how you can support. The ways are immeasurable and as unique as you are. So we'll be back next time to talk about empathy. So until then, if you have any follow-up questions, you know where to find us. We love you. We see you. We believe in you, and we're cheering you on.
Yes.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.